Let's bring in the front bench to break it all down. Former senior advisor to the Liberal Ontario governments of Dalton McGuinty and Kathleen Wynne. Dan Moulton is here. He's now a partner with Crestview Strategy. Rudy Husney is a political commentator and former Conservative leadership candidate. Kathleen Monk is the former director of communications to the late Jack Layton. She's now the principal owner of Monk & Associates. And Laura Stone is a Queen's Park reporter for the Globe and Mail. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you tonight. Kathleen, I'll start with you. Quite an evolution of things that happened. I think our producers wrote it out pretty well in the introduction. What did you think of the degree to which Mr. Poilievre feels he needs to address it, specifically himself, and the content of what he said?
I think he is starting to realize, or his caucus or his staff is, that his situation is pretty untenable. Pierre Poilievre has said he would not legislate on abortion, certainly not on gay rights, other things like that too, but he has not been clear if he'll offer his MPs the right to have a free vote or if they're able to bring forward private members' bills. I think the concern is that right now he has not done anything to discipline any of these people in his caucus. So he hasn't said, I'm not going to sign your nomination papers if you make statements like this, or I'm going to kick you out of caucus. And it's a bit reminiscent, frankly, for me, of 2004 when Stephen Harper tried for his first run and he couldn't quite control his caucus. There was that famous statement by Cheryl Gallant who came out and equated abortion, frankly, with beheadings. And I think that the opposition leaders, the Conservative opposition leaders, trying to get ahead of this, but he hasn't shown any signal that he is actually getting ahead. And if there's more comments like this, not just from Viersen, because, I mean, who walks into an hour-long conversation with an MP from the other party and not think that some of these questions are going to be asked? I mean, it's not like Mr. Viersen is, frankly, a new MP. He's been around since 2015. He's won 3 elections. These questions have come up before, and it was a bad error. There wasn't some truth lasso that, frankly, Nate Erskine-Swift put on Mr. Viersen. He volunteered these statements. I don't believe it was an ambush, and I think that he should have been prepared. And in the same way, Pierre Poilievre needs to be prepared to say what he's going to do to caucus members if they step out of line.
I sort of get the sense, though, that for Mr. Poilievre to go further than being explicit in his own position and discipline caucus members, Laura, for holding views that may get him into trouble, but that they clearly believe in. Like, I feel like that would be a step further than he's prepared to go at this point. I don't know for sure, but that's my impression based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I think that would go against kind of the Conservative Party's ethos of we don't police people's views, right? I mean, he's free to hold these views, but we're not going to act on them. I think that's what Poilievre, has promoted as leader of the party. I think the leader's reaction to Arnold Viersen's comments show that they are really sensitive to this and the damage that it could do to the party. I mean, it's not every day that Pierre Poilievre, frankly, dignifies us with a response. And he put out a very lengthy statement, disavowing this. And we saw Arnold Viersen put out his kind of statement over the weekend on social media, like someone was holding a gun to his head, basically saying, write this. Sorry, I don't mean to make light of it, but it was really clearly from the hammer of the official opposition's office saying, you write this or you're out. So I think it shows a great sensitivity to this. They know that the Liberals are going to use this as ammunition against them. And it really all boils down to the public's faith in Pierre Poilievre as leader and taking his word. And I think that's the trust issue here, that he needs to convince people, if he's going to run a mainstream party, that he as leader would not make these changes. Kathleen's right. He has to answer for his own members. I don't know that he's going to kind of put the hammer down, as it were, because I think that goes against who he is. But I do think it kind of, now this is a question of trust, right? And he knows that these statements can hurt him in kind of the mainstream public.
Yeah, I think Laura's absolutely right, Rudy, that the fact that he put out a specific statement himself to address almost each and everything that Mr. Viersen said does say something, right? And if I were to kind of boil it down, it's sort of, my sense is that basically it comes down to whether, as Laura said, like whether or not he has to be explicit as he has been and whether or not that is enough, essentially, to quell, I think, the stuff that came up with the previous 2 leaders. Like, people around Pierre Poilievre are very aware of what the downfall of Andrew Scheer and Aaron O'Toole is. I think this is their response to that. Whether that goes far enough is the TBD.
Yes, look, Pierre Poilievre has been very clear. I think he said it in French and Radio-Canada that gay marriage is a success. He's been very, during the leadership campaign, he said that he was not going to reopen abortion, the debate on abortion. He got 70% of the vote at that leadership. I think that, look, it was a big, big mistake. I have so many whys on why did Arnold Viersen did that podcast. Why did he say that? It's a Liberal MP. Why do you need to do a podcast with a Liberal MP and say all those things? So I can tell you that for sure Arnold Viersen will not be a Conservative minister in a Poilievre government. That's for sure, because honestly his performance was very bad. And yes, I think that Pierre Poilievre was very right to issue that statement and to make it very clear, because from the beginning of his leadership, he has been very clear when it comes to abortion and when it comes to gay marriage.
He hadn't, though, Dan, been clear on necessarily what would happen with MPs who brought forward different ideas, right? Not as clear as this statement, previous to today, to the statement makes it. The Liberals for weeks have been talking about this issue, putting the kind of prospect in the window of something nefarious that's about to happen. Was this the gift that they couldn't have expected, basically, or would have expected maybe, but didn't think would happen this soon?
Well, I don't think it's any secret that there are a fair number of social conservatives in the current caucus of the Conservative Party. They have lots of voters that elect them across the country. We all know that these MPs exist and that they have these views. I think when Conservative leaders fail, like Erin O'Toole did and like Andrew Scheer did, it's when they look beholden to that part of their party. It's when they look as though social conservatives control them and will control their agendas. Pierre Poilievre, I think, much like Stephen Harper, has done an effective job not appearing that way to voters, being focused on other issues. His response to these comments from the MP is exactly that. And I'm sure he's going to have to release a very similar statement many more times when the Liberal Research Bureau rolls out past comments from candidates and from caucus members on the issue of abortion and on the issue of gay marriage. The effectiveness of that, though, will always rest with whether or not voters think Pierre Poilievre is representative of those views, whether or not he's going to introduce policies to enact restrictions on abortion or reopen the conversation around gay marriage. I really will say that's a tough task for the Liberals right now. I think they need to focus a lot of energy on pushing that conversation with voters. I think you look overseas, French President Macron introduced a constitutional amendment to ratify the constitutional protection for abortion in the French Constitution. That came after the decision of the American Supreme Court to strike down Roe v. Wade. I think the Liberals need to look at ways to push this conversation in Canada, to force Pierre Poilievre to react in a way that's not just dismissing the views of one MP or one candidate in the coming election, but actually react to an introduction of a policy around these topics. That's the only way that the rubber's ever going to hit the road, and Pierre has to truly respond to this situation.
I'm unfortunately out of time, but I feel like we could do a whole nother round, because I've asked them many times, are you going to enshrine the right to abortion, because it's just decriminalized? And so far they promised looking at that, but they haven't gone that far. But that would be certainly an interesting road to go down in a different political conversation. I'll leave it there. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate the conversation tonight. Rudy Husney, Dan Moulton, Laura Stone, and Kathleen Monk.